Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar show that talks about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire like our ancestors before us, and we share our stories, some mysterious, some miraculous, some mystical, some beyond belief, and some practical. And whatever way that it shows up, those stories of how we connect to that which is bigger than us and our understanding of it and what it means to be a good human on the planet at this time. And I love having these conversations. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird. I love taking people on those first steps along their journey of self-discovery, of being more than just blood and bones and tissue, into the greater meaning of your life and the greater aspect of you beyond your physical body. And I love helping people who are a little further along the path and might just want to elevate it some and really get nitty gritty down and more gunk and then back up into some more light, that we got to weave through all of it, don't we, when we're on this sacred journey. So I love the whole thing. I love these conversations, and I love all the amazing people I get to meet as part of my job. Like, the coolest job ever was designed perfectly for me by my soul. So today, I'm really excited to invite on to the show Dr. Mara Karpel. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yay.
Yeah, you got
She
it
has
right.
been practicing she's a practicing clinical psychologist for over 27 years, specializing in working with older adults and caregivers, as well as adults of all ages who are dealing with issues of anxiety, depression, or desiring to create more joy in their lives. She also specializes in evaluating veterans for post-traumatic stress disorder and other service-connected mental health issues. So Dr. Mara is the host of the blog talk radio show, Dr. Mara Karpel and Your Golden Years. She's been on air for over 7 years, a regular contributor to Arianna Huffington's online publication, Thrive Global, to a number of other publications here I'm seeing as well. And she gives lectures all the time. And she lives in Central Texas, which is right where I live, actually. So this is really exciting. She's got a book, The Passionate Life. I'm going to show you a copy of this book. I've been reading it, people. The Passionate Life, you can see that. And it's creating vitality and joy at any age. And it's a guide for all who want to live a more vital, joyful life. So today we're going to talk about what is a passionate life, and we're going to hear, Dr. Mara, and how you came about to your own awakening, where you started pursuing being an author and a speaker and all these wonderful things beyond being a clinical psychologist.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for having me on today. I'm really excited to talk with you and to all of your listeners and watchers of the program and share my passion. As you mentioned, I've been a clinical psychologist for over 27 years. And I used to work in nursing homes. That was a great part of my job in New York, and these very large nursing homes in New York. And then moved to Texas and started working in independent and assisted living, and moved into private practice and now work with vets. So I've kind of meandered along this path. And, I always felt that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I couldn't have imagined doing anything else but being a psychologist. I always felt drawn to other people's stories and to being empathic and really listening. And that was always, I felt like that was a gift. But a few years into actually practicing, I started getting woken up in the middle of the night. It was kind of like my soul was talking to me and telling me that there's something more that you're supposed to be doing. And not that I was supposed to leave psychology, but there was something else that I wasn't tapping into, and I couldn't figure out what that was. It just kept waking me up, and I couldn't figure it out, but it felt like it was more of an awakening of my soul and creativity. So I started, really exploring, and I started drawing because I realized that I used to enjoy drawing and painting, and I had given that up when I started graduate school. So I started drawing a lot. And I started getting into more spiritual paths, like shamanic work. And I felt that wasn't really what it was supposed to be, that wasn't the final step, but it felt like that was what kind of got me to where I was going, that I was more open. And it opened me up to move to Texas, to move to Austin. And I felt like there was going to be more creativity here than I had the opportunity to do in New York. Because of the financial burden in New York, you just really have to work, work, work. And it was presented to me, why didn't I try doing a television show? And I thought that was absolutely crazy. I don't even like to watch videos myself. But I did. I did a one-time live show on Austin local access television, like the week before they sold it to another company. And everything went wrong. The makeup artist made me up for like a play, so it was like really extreme.
Oh no.
The director had me looking at the wrong camera, so you had my profile the whole time and I had no idea. But I walked out of there feeling like everything in my body was buzzing, and I felt so high and so happy that I thought, this is it. And so we decided then, my partner, who was my producer, he's the one that came up with the idea, to start with radio. So I started doing this radio show, and it's turned into my passion. Just like you mentioned, that, you know, I get to meet so many exciting people. I get to interview people whose books I've loved, you know, and never thought that I would ever get a chance to speak with them. Like Don Miguel Ruiz. Who would think I would ever get to speak to him and ask him questions on a show? And then I started, I remember, I think I mentioned this to you when we were speaking, that when I was we practiced on a show in South Texas where it was pre-recorded, and I remember sitting there with my headphones on, and the producer there was sitting next to me with his headphones on, and all of a sudden I had a flashback to when I was 10 years old, and I was on my tape recorder in my bedroom making a radio show.
That is so cool. Isn't that amazing how, like, those moments that your soul reminds you of things, so that you know, like, that was planted in you so long ago, like that desire was just innately there, and then you
Yeah.
just covered it up and forgot about it and moved on and did the things you were
Yes.
supposed, the conditioned thing.
Right. And then on my show, I had a writing coach. And, I remembered that I had always wanted to write a book. So I asked her, would you help me write a book? And she loved the idea. She loved all the content. I was going to talk about what was on my show and the years of my experience. So she started working with me on writing that book, The Passionate Life. And, about 6 months into it, my father suddenly, he fell. He was 93 years old. He fell, and he ended up passing away from that fall. And the direction, I stopped writing for a while, but I forced myself to get back to it because I felt like I was supposed to be writing that book. And so when I got back to it, the direction of the book changed. It became much more raw, much more genuine about my own difficulties along the path. And I realized that writing that book was also a passion of mine, that writing and doing the show were my North Star to get me through these rough times, that they actually helped me to put joy back into my life, in spite of a pain that really doesn't ever go away, right? But joy and pain, I discovered, can live right next to each other.
That, I love that. Joy and pain can live right next to each other. Absolute. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's become my passion to help. And that's how, and as I was writing it, I didn't know what the title would be, but as I was writing it, I realized that I was writing about my journey, along with what I was learning from my guests on the show and my experience, as a psychologist, but it was really a personal journey. And it was about passion and how passion creates resilience in us. And I was discovering that. And that became the title of my book, because that's become my passion, is helping people find their passion. That's what I speak about. That's what, my guests are all about, passion.
Yeah, I resonate with that because of course I live a very passionate life. Everything I do is creative and passionate. But I never lost track of my creativity, because all the way through my life, I always had a creative outlet that I would hold up. Like I would either write or sing, like I'd be in choir, or I would do artwork and do paintings. And for a while, I was trying to be a professional artist in Silicon Valley. So like I was always keeping that open, and I had one of those dry, technical, icky jobs, in Silicon Valley, where being a technical writer, yuck, like long deadlines at a startup. But I would make time with my boss. I would say, I need 2 hours before I start work so I can paint, and then I'll come to work in a much better place. I need to come to work at like 10. So I negotiated that, but a lot of people don't. So like I've noticed that people that don't keep that channel open somehow, they have a really hard time figuring out what they're passionate about. How do you help people with that?
I myself had that, right? When I was in graduate school for 8 years. 8 years.
It's a hard one too. Graduate school is really tough.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 5, but when you go for a PhD, they want you to do, in the program I was in, we had to do a lot of research, and my focus was clinical work, working with people. So I was doing a lot of both. And so it took 8 years, and there's just so much that they pile on you that there's no time for anything else. And, they even told us, if anybody was married, tell your spouse you're not going to see them for a few years.
Wow.
So,
That's really healthy.
extremely unhealthy.
Yeah.
And you're putting out psychologists. So I really did lose touch with it. And I think that's why I was woken up so much in the middle of the night. I mean, I literally would wake up like having a panic attack, that there was something I was forgetting to do. There was something I wasn't doing, and it felt much deeper than something that I didn't do that day. It felt like there was something in my life that I was supposed to do. So my first piece of advice for people is to actually listen to those whispers of your soul. And if you get woken up in the middle of the night, listen to that. Don't just go back to sleep. Don't numb yourself. Don't start taking pills to put yourself back to sleep. Start exploring. Go try new things. There may be things that you never thought of doing, and you see a class and that looks interesting, and you may discover that was something that, like I did, that you thought of when you were a child and you forgot about. Or it may be something completely new that your soul is leading you to. But explore things. Take classes, read books, do something completely different.
Yeah, shake it up and try new things. And
yes.
I think that a lot of times people, like you were talking about in New York, that you had to work a lot of hours because it was so expensive to live there. Your cost of living required you to work crazy hours in order to make the bills. And I think a lot of people are actually in that spot where they got themselves in a career early on that, evolved itself to the place where then they were to become dependent on the money that career makes. But they don't like it, and it's not fulfilling, and it's depressing, and like the life slowly drains out of you.
Right.
And you need to make a change.
Right. And I've interviewed a lot of people on the show who have made complete 180 changes in their life. So you have made.
Oh yeah. I mean,
so for some people, that's what you need to do. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody has the ability financially to do that. some people don't really want to completely leave what they're doing. Like myself, I wanted to stay in psychology, but I wanted to do something else with it, more creative. So, look, finding your passion looks different for everybody. And, in the title of the book is At Any Age, right? And so one of the things that I learned from the 85 and 90-year-olds that I used to see as my clients in nursing homes, and then working with younger people in my office, was that there was a common thread, and that is that everybody wants to feel like they are doing something meaningful, something that has a purpose, and that they love to do, that they feel joy when they do it. So finding your passion when you're 85 years old is obviously not going to be changing your career. But I met 85-year-olds that discovered that they were artists and they had this talent that they never knew that they had, because they went and took that art class that they were giving in the nursing home. And I had a client who was very depressed. And I said, there was an art therapist who came in every week. I said, he's going to come in this week. And she said, I can't even draw a straight line. And I said, well, you don't have to draw a straight line. It's not about drawing. I said, why don't you meet me there? I'm going to go take his class. Because actually, I used to love to just that was my lunch hour. I would go and take his class. So she met me there. And he was so good with the residents there, and he saw her talent, and he said to her, wow, you are really talented. And so she started going back, and she told me that she was an artist and she never knew it. And they had an art showing, and her paintings were like the primary paintings at the art showing. And she wasn't depressed anymore.
Yeah, she had that renewed will to live.
Yeah. So it can look as, as extreme as completely changing your life and taking that risk and jumping into the deep end, full,
full on.
Yeah. Or it can be something like exploring, some creative avenue that you've never done before, or making a decision that you want to be generous and compassionate and do something every day, an act of kindness every day.
Yeah, it can be simple. Well, Louise Hay, from what I understand, didn't even start her work with all this spiritual stuff she's known for until she was like 60.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and look at the empire that she built. I mean, just like amazing spirituality that flowed out of her and rippled out into the world from her decision at 60.
Yeah, and she was a happy woman.
Amazing.
Yeah, she lived a long time, because I do think it really extends your life.
It does. And you can't worry. So here's another piece, like, well, this is a piece I had to go through. You can't worry about what other people think about it.
And I've actually written about that in the book. I wrote a blog about that there will absolutely, definitely be critics of what you do. There is no doubt that people will criticize you for it. So just be prepared for it. And there are a lot of reasons for that. One is that some people feel jealous. There are people who worry about you because they see you making such a drastic change, and that scares them. And there are people who just purposely try to knock you down. So you can't worry about what other people think. I mean, you might have people close to you that say, hey, I have some concerns. They might have some good advice that you can kind of synthesize and say, okay, I understand your concern, and maybe I need to tweak what I'm doing a little bit, but you can't stop what you're doing. If you're passionate about it, you cannot stop it because of other people's criticisms.
Totally. And it seems like your dad, there is a quote that you probably know it better than me, but there's a quote that you repeat several times at the beginning of this book, where your dad just encourages you to think outside the box. What is it that he says? Let your imagination run wild.
Yeah. And it's funny because my dad was probably the most safe person, like in terms of my life, not his life. Like he did crazy things, but for us, for his kids, have a plan A, have a plan B, make sure that everything is really secure. And he would always, as I was growing up, are you sure you want to do that? But then he would get into these, we'd go and buy a lottery ticket together, and he would say, what if you won the lottery? Just let your imagination run wild. And he would get, when he would do that, his eyes would sparkle. And as he got older, that sort of took over. He sort of started trusting more that everything was going to be okay if you took risks. And he would say to me, as he got older, he would say, I trust that everything's going to be fine, and you're going to do fine, and just do what you love to do. So it was definitely a shift that happened for him. And I just, I remember feeling like, wow, he went from worrying about me to, just have a great time. But there was always that little part of him, let your imagination run wild.
I think it's great to have that message
Mm-hmm.
out in the world for people that may not have experienced it in their own families, because I feel like that I definitely had a similar thing. That's why I really latched onto it, because my dad was very pragmatic, like your dad sounds like he was. Like, what's your plan A? What's your plan B? What's your plan C? What's one way you could handle it, and what would be the outcome of that projected? And then, do you want that outcome? That kind of like logical running through everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have this uncle Rob, who is like like fly by the seat of his pants. Just try it, just go do it, don't worry about it, work it out on the way. Like he was the exact opposite. So I always had these two male models, like, okay, this one just goes and does it, and this one is very like responsible. But near the end, my dad was like opening up to be more like my uncle Rob, like, just like live. Because I think the closer you get to death, the more you realize, like, gosh, I don't need to be so safe all the time. Like, the magic happens on the other side of the safety.
I was just reading that today. I don't know if you've read Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul.
No, but that sounds good.
Very good book. I'm reading it very slowly because everything is just like, everything he says is so good. And today I got to the point where he said, what would you do if this was your last week of life? You wouldn't be scared to do anything. You would just live life fully. And so we really need to just do that now, to live our life to the fullest without having fear of what will happen.
So, speaking about living your life to the fullest, if you really want to live a passionate life, you've come up with 4 pillars for how to do that. Tell us about what that is. This is from your podcast, and this is from your book and all the research you've done.
Yeah. So after I wrote the book and I started looking at the book and the blogs I've written and what I've spoken about on the show, I sort of synthesized it all into like 4 essential pillars of living a passionate life. So you can't do it without, if one of these are missing. Like, you can do it you can feel like you're on that path, but it's not going to be sustainable. And then the bricks in the mortar, in the foundation, so to speak. So so the bricks would be like self-care, and all of this is in the book. It's just not put in that way. So self-care would be like because the book is very holistic. So talk about the food that you eat, what we ingest, because we really can't sustain a passionate life if we're not feeling well. So the food that we eat, and I kind of push a plant-based diet. Exercising, because our body really wants to move. What we drink, getting enough sleep, and then the things that we tell ourselves, taming that inner troll, as I call it.
Taming the inner troll, which I loved when you said that. It was awesome.
And then you talked about critics, so detoxing from criticism, and having compassion for ourselves and forgiveness for others and for ourselves. So that's all really important in the foundation. to keep us going. And then the pillars would be, number one would be allowing ourselves to dream no matter
Oh
our
yeah.
age.
I love
Because
that.
we really, we're given the message that children dream, and then as you get older, that's immature. You're just a dreamer if you pay attention to your dreams and want to follow them. So you have to give yourself permission to actually dream and explore your dreams. Listen to them. Having gratitude is another essential pillar. So when we have gratitude, then we feel like we are already enough and that we already have enough, so that when we go on our journey toward our dream, it's not coming from a place of desperation, it's coming from a place of inspiration. So if we may never actually achieve our dream, I may never have this huge television show or anything like that, but I'm having a great time on my path toward that goal. So the joy is in the journey. But if we're not grateful for what we already have, then we don't have joy in the journey. And then we may achieve the goal and feel real good about it, and then we have a new goal and that old one is passé, and we're not happy anymore. So having gratitude is really important. And then having compassion. So compassion is really important. We can't live in a bubble. We can't do this alone. We really have to have compassion for other people in the world. People feel this need to run from pain most of the time. That's why, people binge on Netflix, and, alcohol is big business, and drugs. And, we have a professional sports game 364 nights of the year. So people really just want to escape from pain, emotional and physical pain, pop a pill, feel better. But if we numb ourselves from pain, then we also numb ourselves from truly feeling joy. Because
Absolutely. You can't selectively feel.
you can't. And, it's an extreme example would be someone who has post-traumatic stress disorder. The pain is so painful that they numb themselves. And then when I see them in my office, they tell me they're numb to happy feelings also, because it's just across the board. So that's an extreme example, but we really can't fully feel joy without feeling pain. And part of that, aside from feeling our own pain, is also feeling other people's pain. And I've learned that, in my profession, it's all about compassion, right? I can't do what I'm doing without carrying other people's pain and being able to feel it. But if we allow that pain to go through us and don't grasp it and hold it and make it our identity, then we come out the other side with a lot more appreciation and a lot more joy. And we can see the benefit that we're doing for another person when we have compassion for them. That just having compassion, showing compassion, is so healing for other people that brings us. And there's research on that. It actually increases endorphins, and it increases our immunoglobulin A, which is our, boosts our immune system. So there's actually research that it makes us happier and healthier to have compassion for other people. And compassion then leads us to the fourth pillar, which is generosity. So actually doing things, acting on that compassion to do things for other people. And that, that has a lot of researchers. There's even a study that found what they call the Mother Teresa effect, where people who watch videos of Mother Teresa showing compassion and doing generous acts had an increase of endorphins, of feel-good chemicals, and immunoglobulin A just by watching the video. So when we act on our passion and we do generous things for other people, we feel good. It's called the helper's high, right? We help other people who watch us do it feel good. And of course, we're helping the people, we don't know how many lives we're saving just by engaging in an act of generosity based on our compassion. Um,
These are really great pillars. I know that one of the things that you and I talked about is, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today that really requires a helping hand from people who are full inside and have that to give, right? So along our journey, the first step is to become that kind of person that has these 4 pillars in place with all the bricks, right? You got to become that, which means you've got to do personal work, which means you've got to get off the couch and stop, distracting so much and numbing out. You've got to actually start to feel again. And a lot of people don't realize how much they're not feeling. I think, like I see it as like a crust energetically. I see it as like a crust around people's hearts. It's like this crust, and it develop. I mean, it can develop. It's always trying to accumulate there. People are always, it's always forming back again. And so you've got to keep doing this work to open it back up again. Like every day, you've got to open it back up again and really explore your own heart.
Yeah, I think that's our instinct, to go into a cocoon and find safety. And, we're just going to stay in our own little world and not turn off the TV and don't pay attention to what's going on in the news. And, we want to find a balance. You don't want to watch the news 24/7, which you could if you wanted to, but it's not healthy.
No, it
Um,
actually is energetically very toxic, but
yeah,
yes.
but you also, I think it's important to know what's going on in the world and to actually be part of it. I think, spirituality and you mentioned, filling up your own cup in order to be able to do it. I think it's a give and take. I think that yes, it's important for us to take care of ourselves and take care of the foundation, but we don't wait until we're enlightened to start doing these things for other people and getting out in the world. Because when we start doing things for other people and get out in the world, it actually has a feedback loop. It increases our enlightenment. It increases our ability to feel really good. And it's a balance. Take time to come back to inner peace and then get back out there and do the work.
There's lots of ways to give too. I mean, there's studies that show that volunteerism actually improves your happiness.
Absolutely.
Like it's actually good for you to volunteer.
Good for you. In seniors, they did a study that seniors who volunteered had less physical pain, in
Yeah,
addition
see?
to feeling happier,
Less pain, more giving.
more giving. When we're depressed, we're very self-focused. Depressed people become extremely selfish, because
I've
they're,
been there. I have been there on my journey for sure.
yeah,
I went to
yeah.
that deep dark hole, and after trying to lift everybody in my environment for so long and not being able to do it in my current context, which was not accessing that which is bigger than me, I was trying to
Mhm.
do it from my small self. I couldn't. It was, it eventually went sour. It went south. I talk about that in my memoir. But
Uh-huh.
on the way back up, there became a really early part where I experienced what you're talking about. I started putting out these inspirational messages. Like I started making these little artistic memes for social media with messages that I was getting on my own path. And I just felt inspired to create these and share them. It was just totally it was a gift. And I just kept putting them out there like every day I would put, and it lifted me because then people would see it and go, oh my God, I needed that message today.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's all ways to help. I mean,
And that came back to you and made you
yeah,
feel good.
it did. It made me feel really good. And I was like, wow. And for a while I had to work with validation on that. Like, am I needing validation now for being a good person? So there's a lot of little spiritual exercises along the way with this path. But I think like if you're inspired to reach out and share a positive message, do it. If you're inspired to go and help, I know one of my big passions right now is immigration. And,
Mhm.
because I still believe in this country. I believe in the United States. I believe that we're a country with the Statue of Liberty that says, you know, everybody is welcome here, especially if you're in danger and you need asylum. Like, I'm a person that I fully believe in that constitutionally. And I know we're not living up to it, but I believe in it. So I feel like this is a really big place for us to have huge compassion and generosity, and to look, kind of get that bigger perspective, that I think that we can get immune to how much prosperity we have in this nation. We can become immune to it because we feel like we're working so hard. But if we can just get that bigger picture, we can see, like, there's other people in other countries who don't even have running water. Like,
Right.
I mean, we have a lot of prosperity if we could see it, and that's where the gratitude comes in for that. We can be grateful for how much we have, and then we can have generosity. So talk a little bit about how you see the pillars, because I know this is also a passion of yours.
Yeah, it is a passion. I think it's, we living here in Texas, I think it's even harder to ignore than anywhere else. It's right here at our doorstep, right? There are people trying to come in who are really suffering, and they're being turned away or put into more suffering. And it's hard. I've had to ask for advice about how to find that balance between feeling that pain of compassion and being able to now do something, because it's a little overwhelming. And I think we all have to find that balance of bringing ourselves back to that place of peace and then helping. But I think, compassion's easy when it's for people in our own network, whether it's your family or your church group, or for veterans. Feeling compassion for other veterans is actually kind of easy. And I see that as a baby step. It's not really that powerful. It's good, it's not bad, but it's not very powerful. What's more powerful is having compassion for people that are very different, that are coming from a different place, that maybe you're a little, even some people are a little bit scared of. Having that compassion, I think, is so powerful for your own life, to be able to open up to those people. And, I hear a lot of people saying, well, we have so many homeless people right here. And I think our hearts are infinite. So we can have having compassion for an asylum seeker doesn't mean that you don't have compassion for a homeless person or a veteran with PTSD. You can have compassion for all of them. That's a weak argument. So I do think that that's a really important issue that we need to deal with. And I know if you've looked at what's on my radio program, I've had a lot of guests who volunteer at the border helping asylum seekers. So these are people, it's legal what they're doing. They help those people that are waiting over the bridge in Mexico to be allowed to cross over. And many of them are families who are there for 2 or 3 months, living on the cement in the heat, sleeping on the cement until they're allowed to come over and ask for asylum, because of this metering that they put in place where they only take a few people at a time every day. And then they're also volunteering to help when they come out of the detention centers and are dropped off at the bus terminal in Brownsville. So it's called Team Brownsville, and I talk about them a lot. They're now a 501c3, so they get donations, and people can volunteer. So I went and visited them, and watched what they were doing. I saw the children and families that were being dropped at the bus terminal with nothing, not even shoelaces, and nothing but the clothes that they were wearing and a few belongings in a plastic bag. And, what they do, what the volunteers do is actually bring humanity. They give them food, they give them snacks for their trip to their sponsors, because they're allowed to go to their sponsor. That may have changed in the past few days, but with the change in policy, but they have been allowed to go to their sponsors somewhere in the country to wait until their hearing, where they may or may not be allowed to stay. But that's just how the law has been, that you could go and wait and go through an asylum hearing. So they give them food and for the trip and clothing, change of clothing, snacks, pillows for the children. So it's just humanity. And that's their passion. These Team Brownsville members, these volunteers are so passionate about what they're doing. They could hardly think of anything else.
I
Um,
love that. I mean, I've recently been this year for whatever reason it's been really catching my attention a great deal, and it's, I think with so many things going on in the world, and especially with all the chaos in this country, we've had to been a little, I think a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed by how many causes there are and how many things to pay attention to,
sure.
and trying to pick, like, where do I put my focus, because there's only so many hours in the day and there's only so much energy I have, so where can I put my energy for the greatest impact? And I think you got to follow your heart. For me, I feel for these people because some of my teachers are from South American countries,
Mm-hmm.
and I have some insight into that, a little bit of insight, the tiniest little bit of insight, but at least I feel like I understand something that other people in our country aren't really understanding. Is just the disparity in income and the conditions under which people are living, and like the heroic journey. Like, to me, a family that's going to walk, you know, that thousands of miles with their children to our borders, that is a heroic journey.
Mm-hmm.
Which of us could make that journey?
Yeah.
Which of us in the United States could make that journey for a better life?
So
I mean,
I
that's
think
where my heart's at.
I think what you said is very important, that there's so many things going on that people have to pick what their heart is drawn to, right? Where we can't do everything for everyone. So what's your cause that you're going to be part of? But I think it's important that we all pick a cause, that we all do something to help other people in whatever way we do it. But even if I pick cause A and you pick cause B, I think I can have compassion for the people in cause B, even if I'm not actively working, to
I
help
mean,
them.
couldn't you say, like, thank you for taking cause B?
Exactly.
Because I also feel for that and I don't have enough energy to do it. So thank you for taking cause B. I'll take cause A.
Right.
We could kind of divvy it up,
I absolutely.
and
And
support each other.
and there are so many people in this country who have enough, who aren't suffering themselves, that can actually put energy into helping other people, that if we all picked a cause, we could probably solve every problem.
And,
There's
and I
people
think
who help.
traveling to another one of these countries is a good idea. Getting a different perspective, I would add, is the only thing I would really add to what you've talked about, is like, get a different perspective. Like, actually go to one of these countries or go someplace else where things are radically different. Visit somebody in your community who's very different, so that your perspective might really shift. If you visit, like, I know for me, I was very, very blessed to be able to go to Peru, and so I was blessed to be able to experience a
Mhm.
different culture where, I was blessed to go to a woman's house who was it was made of like mud bricks, and she invited me in and gave me a glass of water. Like, I was blessed to experience that because it gave me a different perspective on my own prosperity. Whereas before, my story was, my house is really small, I really don't have room. I have a mansion.
Right.
And now I
Right.
see it. I have a mansion, and my house is 2,100 square feet. I have a mansion.
Mhm.
I have a whole new perspective. I think if people could shift that, then they would have more gratitude, which would
Absolutely.
lead to more generosity.
Now, the one thing about generosity, and I write about this in the book, is that it's extremely, extremely powerful for our own, for health and feeling happy, and our own spiritual development, as we talked about. But all the power is taken away if we have any expectation from it.
Any
So,
expectation, like, I'm going to be seen as a good person if I give.
Right.
Any sneaky little thing that you
Any,
could take credit for.
right. And even if, how many people will give generously and say, wow, that person didn't even say thank you. Well, now you've ruined all the benefit to yourself. Or they choose to give money to someone on the street and then they say, I bet they used it for alcohol or drugs.
That's a judgment.
Right. So if you give money to somebody, you don't follow them to see how they're going to use it. You're giving it out of the goodness of your heart, and that's it. That's it. That's choice. That's their choice, what they do with that gift.
Now I'm inspired, and we're going to wrap this up, but I'm really, because I'm so inspired by this. If you get Mara's book, you're going to see this is really great. There's this quote. You have an introduction by Stephen Russell, the Barefoot Doctor, and he says, he talks about disingenuousness. Nor is it difficult to see those who devote their time to playing the social media self-promotion game rather than actually being of service to others. And these are the ones everyone flocks to until the next one comes along. The irony, aside from the intense disingenuousness required to behave that way in the world, is that hardly anyone receives any lasting help. Not because what's being offered is necessarily flawed, but because most people actually put the techniques into practice. So being genuine and is actually putting this into practice, that's a breath of fresh air. Like being spiritual and being awakened is putting all of this into your daily practice. It's not about just talking about it, it's about being it. And we're doing our best. So we're human and we're messy and we're flawed and we're going to screw up. But practice makes perfect. Practice every day, right? Because you're
Right.
one of these genuine, working hard people at it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything new and magical that's going to just change your life. People actually have to put in the effort. And a lot of it goes back to things that we already knew, right? It's not a magic pill.
There's no magic pill. I love that because I founded the Skills Not Pills movement. I don't believe in magic pills. Even energy medicine is not a magic pill. It requires a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, I've had a lot of clients who read a ton. I have a ton of self-help books. I mean, I understand. But they come into my office and they're back to the old patterns. And I'll say, what about all those books you read? Are you using any of it? Are you using anything that you came in and said, oh, I read this great thing in the book? No, I mean, it looks like it went out the window. So you have to actually do it. And we've all fall off the path. And I write about that, how to get back up. I fall off the path all the time. And I say, oh, I pick up my book and my own book. And I say, okay.
Read your own book. That's what my guy tells me. Read your own book. Shoot. Okay. So I say all this from a point of humility because like you, I've walked on the path myself. I stumble, I fall, I get back up. But I practice every day. And sometimes the practice can feel, Herculean just to do the thing, just to get
Mhm.
up and do the thing. But the more you do the thing, the more you practice gratitude, the more you practice compassion, the more you really check in with your own heart and actually feel what you're feeling in the moment without bypassing it or putting a plastic angry smile over it. All of that, really practice, the better things get. Really, honestly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it leads to passion.
It does. And then when you live a passionate life, you're super excited. Like I have a great life, but I trudged thousands of miles on this for my own spiritual journey.
Right.
But I'm finally at the place now where not that I don't get challenges anymore, but I'm so filled with passion for what I'm doing and there's so much momentum behind it that taking a moment and being with a small challenge is it's like a moment of self-love. It's like a good thing to be with that feeling or that challenge rather than something I don't want to have to do.
Right. And I bet if you look back at all of those miles that you walked, you would you would see that you were happy that you took those missteps, or you were trudging along on that path, because there were really good things that came out of it.
So
Lessons.
amazing things. Yeah,
Yeah.
good meaty, juicy morsels
Mm-hmm.
that at the time I was angry about.
Right. That's
And
always the case.
always pissed off and shaking my fist at God, you know, like but I think it's time for us to really become adults and really step into this journey fully and like see the whole world as your family.
Hmm. I like that, because we're all connected.
We are. What affects you affects me. What affects Africa affects us. What
Hmm.
affects the Arctic affects us. What affects the oceans affects us. Everything affects us. So the whole world is my family.
Hmm. Well, we're all in the same home. We don't have another home to go to. This
This
is
is it. The astronauts are trying to find another place to go, but I think we better just clean up our own home.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for contributing all your wisdom. And I know that you have a free gift that people can download to get started with you, correct?
Yes, I have a chapter from the book. I think I sent that to you, right?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Just confirming that.
And if
And
you
I'll
go,
provide the link in the show notes.
and if people go to my website, it's there as well.
Awesome.
So, yep, and they can get my book at my website or on Amazon. They can listen to the show on my website. They can read my blogs, drmarakarpel.com.
Yes. And the podcast has got her name as well. So this really great stuff. So definitely check her out. The show notes are down below. Please check out her book. We get the first free chapter and get the book on Amazon and leave a review because that helps her to reach more people. If you
Hmm.
leave a review, it's very helpful. An authentic, genuine, I read this book review is the best.
Thank you.
So, because we like honesty.
Yes.
So wonderful. Thank you for coming on the show. Is there any last thing you want to share with people on our way out the door?
I want to thank you for having me on the program. And we always end my radio show with a quote from Pablo Picasso, which is, "Youth has no age."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Youth has no age. And I love Picasso. Picasso's
yeah.
work. Oh,
Very
so
passionate artist.
so beautiful. So we're going to give everybody kisses in just a second because that's how I end my shows. We give kisses. And before we do, I want to remind everybody, please leave a review on iTunes or a comment on YouTube, wherever you find this broadcast. Leave us a comment, leave us a review so that more people can find the show. That helps us to reach more people who might need exactly the messages that were in this broadcast today to make their world a better day today. So thanks for helping us spread the love, the joy, the wisdom, the hard-earned wisdom, because this path is not so easy sometimes, but it's totally worth it. So keep walking the walk and don't give up. So you guys ready for kisses?
I'm
Yeah.
ready.
All right, here we go. So here they come, people. Mwah. Yay!
Nice.
We'll see you next time on Soul Nature Show. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.